feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming to you Friday morning. It's February 27th. And coming up on today's show, I will be joined by Matt Moore from the Action Network and Locked On NBA podcast. You might know him as Hardwood Paroxysm on Twitter if you're over there. Matt's an NBA at-large writer, but he's based in Denver, so he covers the Nuggets closely as well. So I wanted to have him on in advance of the Wolves-Nuggets matchup on Sunday, but also just wanted to talk with him about the top of the Western Conference and how he sees sort of the tiers of that top group, the top six to be forming. I just recorded that with Matt. I thought he was great. It kind of felt like a playoff series preview pod where we get into, some more of the nitty gritty, which I think specific to Denver is a good thing to do, not just in advance of the game on Sunday, which is important, but also in advance of potentially playing the Nuggets in a playoff series. That conversation will be the final 45 minutes of this episode, but I am going to start solo here with a few topics off of last night's game in Los Angeles because I was there. I was at the Intuit Dome last night, just the most excessively large basketball stadium ever. That place was gigantic. I hadn't covered a game here before. I guess it was cool. It was just you got to come. It's big. I wouldn't say the quality of the game met the quality of the venue. If you didn't stay up late and you missed that game, you missed a rock fight. Both the Wolves and the Clippers had offensive ratings under 100 in this game. Obviously, they just didn't score very many points. But when you break it down to less than a point scored per possession for both teams, that's crazy. It was only the fourth time this season the Wolves scored less than a point per possession in a game, and only the fifth time they allowed less than a point per possession in a game this season. So unprecedented, just low scoring on both sides of the ball. The previous time the Wolves played the Clippers and lost to them at Target Center was also a game they scored less than a point per possession. And that's because of the way that the Clippers guard them. They load up the defense to the heavy side of the floor, and they just dare the Wolves to play isolation basketball against that. And both games against the Clippers, the Wolves fell into that trap, which I think is very relevant when we think about the interaction between Chris Finch and Anthony Edwards at the end of the game. Those things are tied to each other, which we'll get to that in a second, I promise. But that conversation about Ant's late game decision-making starts with what is the defense doing to the Wolves, and what do the Wolves want to do against that defense? I asked Finch about that specifically after the game, and we'll play that here. Talk about the way they were loading up on you defensively. What do you want the counter offensively for you guys to look like when that's the defense that you're facing?
Throw the ball to the other side of the floor where there's no defensive players. Simple as that. Yeah.
Simple as that. Wanted to throw it to the other side of the floor where there are not as many defensive players or any defensive players. So that's what was happening during the game. The first 43 minutes of the game before clutch time, and then you get to crunch time. And what I think unfolded between Finch and Ant was that Finch got more adamant at the end of the game about not falling into the trap that the Clippers were laying. But the problem is that doesn't line up with the Wolves' typical pattern at end of games, right? Where they pretty much just play through Ant at the end of games through hell or high water. The Clippers knew that and were guarding him as such. And Ant is used to that. Ant wants the ball at the end of the games in his hands and taking the shots. He wants to play that way, kind of regardless of how they're guarding him. And I think what we learned last night is that he just is going to play that way and live with the result of however well he shoots while driving into a loaded defense or shooting over double teams like he did when he made that game-winning shot. He makes that game-winning shot, which leads to the interaction with Finch that was clearly caught on television. And John asked Ant about that interaction after the game when we were in the locker room. I will play that here. Sorry. Here's Anton talking to Finch.
You kind of do to try to attack them down the stretch so you could pull it up.
I just tried to shoot it every time that I touched it. Yeah, I mean, some people gonna say I should pass the ball. I'll be all right. Yeah, I think you got a better chance of winning if I shoot it.
Was your coach one of those that said that?
Me and my coach got the best relationship ever. So, I mean, he'd be right most of the time. Well, 98% of the time, he'd be right. Like, he told me to pass the ball tonight, and I should have passed it, but I shot it instead, and it went in. So, the basketball guys was on my side tonight.
Personally, I think both lines of thinking by Ant-Finch are logical here, right? Like Finch was right to have hesitation about the Wolves continuing to play offense at the end of the game, the same way they'd been playing throughout the game when they were playing very, very bad offense. But I also get where Ant is coming from too, right? One, his shooting numbers at the end of games this season have been really, really good. And two, specific to last night, I don't really know where else he was going to get help from on that possession. Who else was going to get a good look there that you were confident in? I mean, Randall was having his worst game of the season, and your other options out there are, DiVincenzo and McDaniels. I think I get it. I get both sides of it, but I think the only real issue in that interaction calls into question, or what that interaction calls into question, is who's in charge. And we know this team does, need direction, and those two need to give the direction together. Finch is the captain, and Ant is steering the ship too. They just have to be on the same page there. And I thought last night's circumstance kind of really maybe accentuated the idea that they're not. Though I'm not sure that I personally don't take it that way. I would read it. I wouldn't read it as that being as big of a gap in reality as maybe it seems at this moment after how that played out last night. So wanted to start with that last shot. That was, again, boring game, but that was the real factor in the game was the end of game and the Ant shot and what played out there. The other big thing that happened last night that I want to hit on before we bring Matt in too is that they signed Kyle Anderson. The Wolves signed Anderson yesterday after he was bought out of his contract from the Memphis Grizzlies and signed a rest of season contract with the Wolves. We did, you might remember this, we did media availability with Tim Connolly the day after the trade deadline. And when I asked him about the buyout market specifically, Connolly said this. Roster spots, do you envision more to come here?
Yeah, we're gonna have a couple faces. I mean, we can go at 13 for a couple weeks. We want the carnage of yesterday to settle and see who's out there and who's not out there. We have a couple guys in mind, and I think we have, we are gonna, potentially see some familiar faces.
Notice he said familiar faces plural there, and the familiar faces plural are Mike Conley, of course. He came back, and now so did Kyle Anderson. Those are familiar faces, and I think the question now is how familiar are the roles for those familiar faces going to be? Obviously, for Mike Conley, the role is not familiar since being reacquired. He has largely been out of the rotation. He played 4 minutes last night when the game was kind of falling apart. But yeah, Mike is largely out of the rotation, which is very different than 2 seasons ago when Conley started 76 games and was playing, almost 30 minutes a night. So not a familiar role for Mike Conley as he returns. But I do wonder if Kyle Anderson's role might be similar to his role from 2 seasons ago, which would be a big thing for a buyout guy. Because it was a big role for Kyle. He played in 79 games in his final season in Minnesota and played 23 minutes a night. Some of those were starts, so juiced it up a bit, but he was like a 20 minutes a night guy. I'm not saying Anderson is going to play 20 minutes a night, but I would be, without having talked to anybody, just kind of taking it in with the news, I'd be pretty shocked if he doesn't have a consistent role on this team sooner than later. As I got back from the game last night, and I just hadn't really had time to dig into the Kyle Anderson piece at all. I was just putting some notes together and how I was thinking about it. Or my process, I guess. The first thing I did was I Googled how old is Kyle Anderson. 32 years old, doesn't turn 33 until the end of September. And my head immediately then went to the fact that Mike Conley was 35 years old when they traded for him at the trade deadline in 2023. That was, as we remember, right, very much not the washed version of Mike Conley. And that version of Conley existed for 2 solid seasons. Conley really only began falling off the age curve last season when he turned 37. I mean, he's 38 now. Kyle is not. Kyle's 32. And I say this to point out that Anderson is very likely the same player physically that he was 2 seasons ago in Minnesota when he was 30. So if there were elements of Kyle's game that you liked and thought were helpful, it's very likely that he can still do those things on the basketball court at 32 years old. And we know that Finch liked many elements of Anderson's game enough 2 seasons ago to be playing him 23 minutes a night. So much so that he consistently played Anderson throughout that season, despite Kyle being completely ignored from 3-point range and only shooting 23% from deep that season. I mean, I would be shocked if Kyle Anderson is not in the Wolves rotation sooner than later. And I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple weeks he's the clear 8th man on the team, ahead of Bones Highland and only behind Naz Reid and Ayo Dosunmu off the bench. If that's true, then the question I have is where and when will he play? And the first thing that comes to mind for me of where you would play Kyle Anderson is in the non-Rudy minutes. We've talked all season about the non-Rudy minutes and how they have a 108.6 defensive rating with Rudy Gobert on the floor this season and a 121.5 defensive rating with him off the floor. 13 points per 100 possessions worse defensively when Rudy is off the floor. I mean, that is a nuts number. That right there is Rudy Gobert's case to win Defensive Player of the Year this season. 2 seasons ago, Rudy Gobert did win Defensive Player of the Year, and the Wolves defense was only 2.5 points per 100 possessions worse when Rudy was off the floor. They were an elite defensive team when Rudy was on, 107.8, and a very good defensive team when he was off the floor. A lot of credit there goes to Cat, right? We've talked about that. Cat did a better job of holding down the 5 spot defensively than Naz Reid or Julius Randle have this season. But it wasn't just Cat. A lot of credit goes to Kyle Anderson in those non-Rudy minutes 2 seasons ago as well. When Rudy was off the floor and both Towns and Anderson were on the floor, the Wolves defense was elite that season, 108.6. That's the same number as the Rudy on defensive rating this year. The only time the Wolves defense began to fall apart that season is when both Gobert and Anderson were on the bench, and it was just Cat out there. That team needed a Kyle Anderson in the non-Rudy minutes to be successful, and this team needs something in the non-Rudy minutes to be better than what they have been defensively, and I think it will be very difficult for Finch to not use Kyle as an elixir specifically with that group, and I think he should. It's worked before, and if it doesn't, it's because Anderson himself has fallen off some sort of age cliff, which, again, I find hard to believe is true when he's only 32 years old and wasn't exactly relying on athleticism earlier in his career. I mean, my prediction really is that Anderson is a big part of this team for the rest of the season. And honestly, I think I might go as far to say as he's a big part of the future. I mean, am I crazy to think that Kyle Anderson is going to be on this team for the next few seasons? It kind of sounds crazy, but I definitely had a minute last night when I was thinking about it. And the idea that Kyle Anderson is a part of this core going forward, it definitely crossed my mind. I mean, we'll see how this all looks and plays out. But if Kyle's a minimum contract guy and only 32 years old, I could see him being here for the, I don't know, semi-long haul. Because it's 32. I could see him being an impactful player with the core of this team beyond this season. It's going to be fun to see him out there, see him in person. And I think that could happen as early as Denver on Sunday, where Kyle joins the team. And I don't know when he's going to start playing, but I think it won't take long once Kyle Anderson is ready to start playing to become kind of a staple of this this Wolves rotation. So we will see there. That's all I got from last night. We are now going to zoom out with Matt Moore after the break. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, and Ant's big shot at the end of the Clippers game last night was his latest arrow in the quiver to win Clutch Player of the Year this season. And the odds on Prize Picks have shifted from Ant being the favorite to win Clutch Player of the Year to the heavy favorite to win Clutch Player of the Year. Tyrese Maxey is his competition there, but it's still plus odds. I mean, I think there's still, or you can make money off of it. There's still some value there because I do think Ant is very likely going to win. I mean, maybe should have hit it a couple weeks ago when the odds were more even there, but I bet this point would be kind of shocked if Anthony Edwards doesn't win Clutch Player of the Year. Naz Reid also remains the favorite to win Sixth Man, and Rudy Gobert has the third best odds to win Defensive Player of the Year. Again, as I always say, I think these are kind of fun to track, and you can now wager on them over at Prize Picks along with point spreads. And that's, of course, in addition to putting together daily fantasy lineups at Prize Picks. Now, you know the deal. There's always something going on at Prize Picks, and now a lot more over in the teams tab. If you do not yet have a Prize Picks account, all you have to do is put in the promo code Dane when you sign up. You'll receive $50 in lineups when you place your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks.com, Prize Picks app, using promo code Dane.
Hey, yeah.
All right, we are now joined by Matt Moore from the Action Network, from Locked On NBA, Locked On Nuggets, the Hardwood Paroxysm Substack. He's the Anthony Edwards of NBA Twitter, a volume shooter. What's up, man?
It's a good way to describe it. I wish my efficiency was a little bit better. It could be a little bit more on point. But yeah, how are you, man?
I'm good. Like I was saying, I'm still here in LA after the Wolves win over the Clippers last night. If you call it a win, that was did you watch that game at all?
That was gross. That game was gross.
It's been so much of this, man. It's just like
the most interesting thing about this team to me is that they have no floor. That just like if things are not going well and you're like, well, they won't be that bad. It's like, no, they could be that. They could be that bad. Like, are they going to lose? Maybe not. They might make you as bad as they are, but the floor for this team is so low, and yet the ceiling is so high. When the Wolves are on, man, they're one of the best teams in the NBA. And then a lot of nights you're just like, oh man. Oh, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on it, because my takeaway is I feel kind of the same way about them as I do about the Lakers, which is I point to your best player sets the tone and the culture for the team when you get to this point in your development. And I think a lot of it is that Ant's great and Ant's awesome, but I don't think that Ant comes with a hyper professional. We are absolutely going to play great tonight. I am going to hold everybody accountable, and I'm going to be great, and we're all going to be ready to go every single night. It's not that I don't think Ant's awesome. It's that I don't think Ant is consistent, and that's a difference.
That's true. I mean, everybody who's watching sees that he's not. There is a consistency to the pattern, though, and it's the pattern. And I mean, and Ant would say this. I've asked him about it. Like, the pattern is a team that doesn't have a main guy out there, and he said it's a bad thing, but they just turn it off. Like, there's no Kawhi last night for the Clippers. You know, they had a bad one against the Pelicans when Zion didn't play. Like, just like anytime it's a really, I guess, depleted opponent like that, the gear doesn't turn up. It turns down, and that's where the floor can fall out. But what do you make of the fact that, like, if they are playing the Thunder, you know what version of Ant you're getting, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there are very few teams with their kind of profile from a seeding and win performance and all these types of things that I would have the kind of confidence that I have in the Wolves with, but they are the one where I'm just like, yeah, look, is it a coincidence? You could say like they were lucky. I do not think that. Like, they've made the Western Conference Finals 2 years in a row. And everyone kind of looks at last year and is like, well, the Warriors didn't have they were beating that Warriors team anyway. The Warriors team was cheeks. That Warriors team is not good. It has not been good. It will not be good again. They are too old. They don't have enough talent. doesn't work, etc. So the Wolves would have won that series anyway. They would have made the conference finals anyway, and that's 2 years in a row. So yeah, like when it's an environment that puts you in the spot, the trick is that I pay so much attention to the regular season and finding the connection between the regular season and the playoffs, because we have this like belief that, oh, regular season doesn't matter. It's just about the playoffs, when actually it's just not true. If you don't have a top 3 seed, you don't win. If you don't have these certain markers, you don't win. And the reason, the correlation is because the road is too tough. That's my problem with Minnesota, where it's like, guys, your best shot at winning the title was when you put yourselves in a position to have a great chance of winning. Like, you put yourselves in a really good position in 2020 and 24. And you have to, the consistency is what gets you there. It gets you where you're like, I don't have to go on the road for a game 7. We're going to have game 5 at home if we're up 3-1. It puts you in a much better position to be able to advance. That's the thing with the Wolves, is it's not that they're not good enough. It's that they don't give themselves the best chance to win a championship.
Yeah, that's the thing I've been hitting on, of the importance of the seeding, is not to need to, I mean, one, the road piece, like you said, game 5, game 7, whatever. It's just having a difficult opponent in round 1 makes a difference. Just that alone. Like, the OKC and San Antonio, who are going to be the 1 and 2, are going to play Phoenix or Portland probably in that first round, and that's a hell of a lot different than who Denver and Minnesota are going to play. I mean, I know the Lakers and Rockets are bruised or whatever, but even if Denver or Minnesota are the 3 seed, they're playing one of those 2 teams, and that's just a huge difference than playing Phoenix or Portland. And then in the scheme of, like, we're running a parlay here, right? You got to win the first round and the second round and the third round. And if your odds in the first round are more like a coin flip, it has a drastic impact on what your output is or your odds of actually coming out of the West. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, is just the top of the Western Conference, and just how you're kind of tiering it out and seeing those groups. To me, it seems the sort of consensus out there, which I'm just going to guess you don't agree with, but I think the consensus would be tier 1, OKC and San Antonio, tier 2, Denver and Minnesota, tier 3, Houston and LA.
Yeah, that's a consensus. I would agree that is the consensus belief. I would go OKC by itself, because even with the reason that we put San Antonio there is because they beat OKC. And it's like, well, they also have, they have this really great record. They do. The problem I have with San Antonio is very simple. Even when the Thunder were so young, they didn't win the first time through. They made the conference semifinals in their first time through, and then they lost to the Mavericks, and then they got better, and then they won the title. This is going to be Victor Wembanyama's first playoff series. It's going to be Stephon Castle's first playoff series. It's going to be Dalen Harper's first playoff series. Fox has been in 1. Vassell's been in maybe, right?
Because the Kings went to the second round, right? And they lost to the Warriors.
Yeah. No, they lost in the first round, right? Because isn't that what happened? I believe that's what happened. I don't think that the Kings made it out of the first.
Oh, yeah. What am I thinking of? Yeah, you're right. Okay, I think you're right. Whatever. The minimal. Fox would be the most experienced.
Fox is the experienced guy. Yeah. And that's.
And he played for the Kings.
Yeah. And that's not great, right?
Right.
Vassell. So, like, you're really talking about, like, Harrison Barnes. Yeah, they lost 3-4 versus the Warriors in that game 7 in 2023. So, like, there just isn't the experience factor there, and there is a consistent pattern of these teams that do not have that level of experience not making it all the way. So, I think OKC's best punch is probably better than what they gave San Antonio. I think the course of a 7 series is going to expose some things about Victor, because his game is still so raw, that don't show up. So, to get back to it, I think it's OKC at the top by themselves. I think tier 2 is San Antonio, Denver, Minnesota. Tier 3 is Houston. Tier 4 is the Lakers.
Okay.
That's where I have to put it.
Why does Minnesota deserve to be in the same tier as San Antonio and Denver?
Because, 1, I like their matchups quite a bit. I like they are maybe the team that I think San Antonio needs to duck the most. I don't think San Antonio is going to like that physicality. I don't think they want that kind of size. I don't think they want to deal with Anthony Edwards, and they have the math advantage, which with San Antonio is a little bit of an issue. San Antonio is a mid-range team, and they want to get to the rim. Their three-point shooting is actually a little bit of a problem. And so if you get into a series with Minnesota, and Minnesota is like, we're just not going to turn the ball over, then I think that spells a lot of trouble for San Antonio. We'll talk about the Denver matchup, which I think is different now with how Denver has adapted a lot of its personnel, specifically because the Wolves kicked the crap out of them for 2 years. But I do think still that it's not going to shock me if it's Minnesota-Denver and Minnesota takes game 1 in Denver and all of a sudden the series is flipped and now it's going to go 7 and who knows? Like there's a lot of ways that you can see that series going Minnesota's way. And then I still maintain Minnesota has a really good edge versus OKC. They just, as much as I love Chris Finch and I've loved him since the G League, I think that he absolutely butchered that series last year versus the Thunder. I think that he made several extremely disastrous decisions in terms of how you have to approach playing OKC. But
can you elaborate on those?
Yeah. So let's start with who did you win with? Like, who did you win with? And the answer is Rudy. And what happens though is OKC makes you feel a certain way as a coach, and it's not just Finch, it's everybody. Everybody winds up with, we can't keep up with them. We've got to be able to go smaller. We need spacing and versatility and to not face these type of matchups. When in reality, OKC is purposefully gearing everything to try and convince you of that because they know that on a long-term basis, they will lose to bigger teams. They're soft on the offensive glass relative to their other performance levels. They don't generate a lot of offensive rebounds. They do foul more than they are worse at fouling than they are the other things. And they don't have a great three-point rate to be able to keep up with you. It's gotten better. They're now trending towards being elite in that regard. The difference with the physicality is if you have to play bigger, that takes some of their spacing away and makes a weakness of theirs even worse.
Yeah.
So a lot of this just gets into, you have to be able to withstand the feeling of how OKC plays and not get sucked into, we need to go to Nas at 5. We need to play smaller. This isn't going to work. Let's play this other way. You have to basically supersize and just be like, over the course of this game, they are going to be frustrated and uncomfortable when we go big. And it's really hard. And there are very good, valid reasons for why coaches feel that way. But the results bear out pretty consistently that the process doesn't line up. That just like the deductive logic of, if I do this, we'll have a better chance to win, isn't true, because that's what OKC wants. You got to get them out of their game. And to me, that's going big.
So two things. That's just a pattern with Finch in general of whenever it gets sticky, Rudy's minutes go down, and they're down by 10 points. And the path in any given game to come back is Rudy off earlier, go with Reed and Randall in the front court, try to score with them. I that group has been very difficult for me to watch over the course of the season. Though, I mean, I know it's a buyout player. I know it's Kyle Anderson. I think he helps in those lineups. And I think he's going to play. I just think Finch is going to play him there. They miss that presence. When Rudy's off the floor, they have no big who can play in coverage, period. Yeah. Nas can't do it. Julius can't do it. They need to be able to rely on Rudy as much as possible, even if there's a deficit there. I do think it's interesting, though, like the one game, maybe it's not the one game, but one game I remember them not falling into that was when they beat Oklahoma City at home. Mm-hmm. And it was actually Hartenstein's first game back from his injuries, like mid-December or something like that.
Yeah.
And in the second half, I think to your point, Dagnall starts Isaiah Joe instead of Hartenstein there. And you're like, it didn't work, but it was a dare. It was a dare to get away from those Rudy lineups. I think you completely nailed it there. I do wonder, though, in the crucible of the playoffs, if Finch can stick with the quote unquote best plan versus I don't know, just falling into how the game feels.
Yeah,
because the games do feel like that too, where we do need to come back. It's like you do come back when Rudy plays too. Like you win those minutes, you actually win those by more. consistently.
I mean, the job basically has to be, and I think this is really tough, but you honestly have to go in with an expectation. Like, you want to be up by 30, you want to blow them out, right? But like, let's be reasonable. What's the most likely game script? And the game script is like, they go up by 15, they go up by 20, and then all of a sudden you look up in the third quarter and it's like, it's only 8. It's only 10. And then it's like midway through the fourth quarter and it's like, this is a 7-point game. Like, this is not out of reach yet. Everyone's like, yep, OKC, like, this Minnesota team is just not it. And then you try and get it into a 4-point game with 5 minutes left. And you count on Ant and how great he is in the clutch, which I've done a lot of research on this recently. So I could just tell you, like, clutch performance in the regular season does not have any translation to the playoffs. But that needs to be the objective, is try and get them into a close, tight game and try and get them uncomfortable. This is one of the hardest things about elite teams like the Thunder, like the Celtics, like the 2010s Warriors, though they're a step above, obviously. Your key has to be able to make them uncomfortable. And for whatever reason, the best, and well, I know why, it's because the best teams make coaches uncomfortable. And they start to just be like, I can't, we can't, what's, and it's weird because the rest of the year, they're like, we want to focus on what we do best.
Right.
That's what we want to do. And then they get into a playoff series versus a team where they actually think they are outmatched. And they're like, we have to completely game plan to them. And that is not going to get you anywhere. You have to do what you do so well that team bends, because now they're no longer throwing you their fastest pitches.
I remember Rudy Gobert's introductory press conference and Finch being asked about this. It was it was him and Carl at the time. And it started with, we're going to make teams adjust to us. We're not going to, we're going to not adjust to teams. And it's been that over and over. Started saying that a little bit less recently, because they do adjust to opponents with this Randall version of their backup 5, or Reed, however you want to talk about it, post cap. But you're right. Like, that is the goal. That is the intention. It's hard to stick. It's hard to stick to. You're not concerned about, like, the Wolves facing a lot of ball pressure in the playoffs and that breaking them? I mean, you said that, like, they're not going to turn the ball over. It's pretty strong signals that they're going to turn the ball over.
Yeah, I mean,
are pressured.
That has to be part of the script, right? Like, that's how the Wolves open the doors. Like, you take out the turnovers and you're just like, you're not beating them. Like, they're too good on both ends. Their formula, I think, is too good. Unless if you're going to beat them, it's going to be like a coin flip because you face Jokic and a high level team. I mean, I think you should definitely worry about it. I think it's right to worry about that process. I think there will be things that will get better. I also, that's going to be, I think, one of the battles with San Antonio is going to pressure you a ton. And that the combination is like, if you can get into your stuff, you can probably beat them, but they're going to try and get you out of your stuff so much. I think it's a worthwhile concern, but like, Denver's not going to pressure you. That's not
that's why I like that matchup. Yeah. And like, they can handle the pressure if Ant brings it every time. Ant has a lot of turnover. I mean, recently, just this week, he has a bunch of turnovers, but they're the silly, like, driving into a crowd, something stupid in transition, whatever. But he can handle Castle picking him up full court without just getting ripped like maybe Dante would or Julius would in those spots. The concern I have about that is not his ability to be able to handle it. It's about how much juice he has for the last 5 minutes of the game at that point when they really need to rely on him there. And if when they play Portland the other night, they're picking him up full court the whole time, and it ends up being one of Ant's worst clutch games of the season. That's a pretty direct corollary to me. He said so in the locker room afterwards, like, I was gassed. I didn't have anything at the end of the game there. So that's why I have concern about ball pressure, is not because Ant can't handle it. It's because nobody else really can to take off that fatigue burden that I think that he feels in those times there. But maybe let's move over to Denver, who I think that's one of the biggest advantage points of this matchup for them, is who the hell guards Ant.
Right.
I mean, that's been an issue. That was an issue 2 years ago when Ant was a lesser version of himself, and Christian Brown tried, but you're watching them closer. I don't have a lot of faith if your game plan is going to be similar to what it was before, where it's just like, going to put Brown on Ant, and that's going to be the primary the whole time. I think this devolves to a point for Denver where either Ant kills him or they have to put Gordon on Ant. And it starts for me with that matchup. There's a lot of obvious, like Denver's 3-0 against the Wolves this year. There's a lot of issues they have against Jokic, but of any of these good teams in tiers 1, 2, and 3, or whatever that we're talking about, I guess LA can't guard Ant either, but Denver, that's always been my concern for Denver is who's going to guard him. KCP couldn't before, Brown couldn't. I think it's only Gordon, and I don't think you're going to put Gordon on Ant for a whole playoff series.
So the answer here, and it may not work, but it actually is. I think most Wolves fans are going to scoff because it's one of those guys that not a lot of people know. The answer is probably going to be Spencer Jones. Yeah,
and then Gordon guards Randall.
Yeah, because AG doesn't do well when he has to guard guards, and what Spencer provides is he's like if you just like shrunk down Gordon just like a little bit, where he handles guards a little bit better. Especially with the fact that Ant's not as much of a grifter as other guys are, because that's really Spencer's liability, is he just doesn't know their tendencies yet, because this is his first year really playing minutes. But he's an excellent, really physical defender that I think can probably, I don't know. A lot of this, though, when we talk about this, is what is your expectation for guarding Ant? It's like, are you going to hold him to 35%? No. Like, are you going to hold him to 18 points? No. Like, your expectation is make it hard on him. You honestly, what you want to do is you want to try and be like, you want him to be a volume inefficient scorer. He takes a lot of shots. The game is not easy. He scores, but it takes him a lot of shots to do so. And then it's like, oh, Anthony Edwards had 42, but the offensive rating when he was on the floor was 111. And that's kind of, I think, the problem there.
Today's show is brought to you by Rula, R-U-L-A, and Rula is online therapy that won't break the bank, and that's because Rula works with most major insurance plans, making it so sessions can cost as little as $15 and in some cases even $0, depending on your benefits. For me, I'm really grateful for my experiences with therapy. My experiences have helped me make sense of the things in life that don't make sense. We have a lot going on, and when that happens, keeping our heads clear as possible is the best thing we can do for ourselves. I know for me, in hindsight, there are times in life where, I'm sure seeing a therapist would have helped me get through a difficult time, but there were barriers to entry. Having fast, affordable access to the right therapist would have made that easier for me. And that's where Rula comes in. Rula makes therapy simple, affordable, and fast. They work, again, with most major insurance plans, and the average session copay is just $15. $15. That's basically the cost of lunch, but instead of a sandwich, you're investing in your own headspace. Thousands of guys have already used Rula to finally get the care they needed. Don't keep putting it off. Go to rula.com/DaneMoore and get started today. That's RULA.com/DaneMoore. Take the first step, get connected, and take control of your mental health. There's equally as many problems on the other side of this in the Wolves guarding Denver's superstar. It's what feels most different about this matchup from two seasons ago is that the Wolves struggle in their ability to be able to bring help in this matchup, because the help comes from the 5, and Rudy can't help if he's guarding Jokic. So you fall into Randall being the guy that Jokic is guarding there. And then, Rudy's the helper. Obviously, that was a huge part of why they beat Denver in 2024. That look worked. You were able to keep Rudy as a help defender. I just don't. I don't know if it can be Randall. Like, I get wanting to have Rudy lurk and do that, but I'm not sure that Randall can put up the resistance that, or even close to the resistance that Cat did there. And it has me spinning, man, of like, can they go with Jaden here? I know you want to put him on Jamal, but like, or as much as you can be intentional about Nas being out there. I struggle with the idea that your defensive game plan starts on the premise of Julius has to be the primary on Nikola Jokic simply so Rudy can help. I think that's why this matchup is very different than it was a couple of years ago when the Wolves very much had Denver's number. I don't think we can say that at all anymore, because that's why they had Denver's number.
Yeah, I agree. I also think a lot of it, Jamal Murray, A, was really unhealthy, and B, was not very good against the exact type of defenders Jaden, Nikhil. The difference here is Jamal is healthier and Jamal is much better against those because he's had to play against them so much that he just, if you do something over and over again, the practice is going to improve you. And he's gotten better versus OKC and he's gotten better versus Minnesota. Now he's got to be healthy, which he burned a lot of energy in that month without Jokic. So we'll see, especially his defense is atrocious right now. I actually have a counter for you. I have another idea, which is don't worry about Jaden. Keep Jaden on Jamal. You're going to hide Nas on Cam Johnson or Randall on Cam Johnson. And you're going to put Ayo Dosunmu on Nikola Jokic. And you're going to front as much as possible because
Like
you've
Caruso
got
style.
Yeah, that is what gives them problems because what used to happen is when they would switch or put a small on Nikola, he would run them back into a pick and roll because the small doesn't know how to play the drop. But because teams have scouted that so much now, they understand the mechanisms of what Denver can't get to offensively. And so the big stays low. You still crowd the paint. It's still difficult for them to kick. And if they do, and if you're looking at a Christian Brown open corner 3-pointer, you live with it. And you're just like, fine, whatever. Those are the kind of things that you kind of give up. But to me, when you have a defender that is physical, strong, active, a dog, and flops, you can really cause Nikola a lot of frustration because once you break through the barrier and he starts worrying about the officiating, he doesn't get out of it. He spent the entire playoffs last year, round 1 and round 2, having a miniature battle with the officials over how he was being officiated. And it took over his game. And he still put up incredible numbers because he's the best in the world. That is how you disrupt him, is if you put Ayo Dosunmu on him and you front and bracket from behind. You can even bracket behind with Randall and dare, if you're going to dare Gordon, you're going to pay for it. But you might try that a couple of times. You can bracket him. There are these things, but it all starts with being willing to put a guard on Nikola because the Nuggets don't have a 2-guard that can punish you enough in Christian Brown. Now, Peyton Watson is starting and in those lineups, that's a little bit different. But they don't have another guard that can really create the way that they need to if you spend a guard on Nikola.
I think you're giving the Wolves a little bit too much credit in their ability to execute that coverage. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then as I think about that more, I think about that might be an advantage of playing them in the first round, in the 4 or 5, when you got like those 6 days off in advance. It's like basically a training camp before the series. I mean, that has done a world of good for the Wolves when they played Phoenix 2 years ago in the first round, and they were ready for the way that they were going to guard Ant and be heavy in the gap, all of those things, and they worked on. They knew how Phoenix was going to guard them, and they went at that over and over again there. And I wonder if they have game plan time to be able to put this in, that they could do it. But I don't know if you have that time in the second round. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. I mean, this is why you take care of your series early. Like if they take care, I don't think it would have mattered because of how, again, I just thought Finch botched it. But if they take care of Warriors earlier, if they don't lose that game 1, which they shouldn't have lost, if they get out of that series quicker, maybe they've got time to actually sit down and go through the game plan on OKC and be like, here's what we want to do. Because it did feel to me like when they got into the OKC series, it was just like,
dude, it was just a sprint. It was so drunk. The whole and that's just the Western Conference Finals. I didn't really realize this until covering the last 2. I mean, it's so. If people don't understand this, it's crazy how much more time there is between first round series games than conference finals series games, and I think that was part of it too. Of like, they didn't even in between days, they didn't have the time or enough time for them to practice and really script out how they wanted to do it against Oklahoma City. I think there's an advantage to them or a disadvantage to any opponent if the Wolves who are just generally speaking a little lower IQ, basketball IQ team than I think their counterparts at the top of the West. I think that makes a world of difference. And I like the idea with Io. I think it might be Kyle Anderson is doing what you're talking about for them. I think Finch is going to be very confident in just putting him out there and to do weird basketball IQ-y type of things. But the premise of this all, and we're talking about Randall on him, Io, Kyle, whatever, it's that you can't put Rudy on him. You can't put Rudy on him, not because Rudy's like an absolute zero in that. I mean, yes, Jokic can cook him. He's probably close to a zero. But you can't get Rudy in foul trouble. And that's what happened on Christmas Day. You know, Rudy needs to be able to play 35 minutes in this series per game, even if he's not the one guarding Jokic, because they need him for help on Jamal. They need him for help on other drivers and cutters and that sort of thing. I mean, this team is trash at help defense outside of Rudy Gobert. So the whole premise of this idea is to actually have help defense, and you need to have Rudy Gobert out there to play help defense, which is why somebody else needs to be guarding Nikola Jokic in this, because he's just gonna go at it, dude. He's gonna if Rudy's on him, he is going to be thinking like, yes, I am going to get him in foul trouble. It's not going to be passing. It's going to be he's going to put his head down and he's going to get to the basket and he's going to try and draw fouls on Rudy. And Rudy's going to be all like, I'm not going to let him score, and he's going to foul. You know, that can't be the matchup.
It's funny that you have this view. I love this dynamic because Nuggets fans have come such a long way in being forced to respect Rudy to now they genuinely are like, I don't want to see Rudy Gobert guarding Nikola ever again. I don't ever want to see it. He's such a tough matchup. I'm serious, man. Like,
but what are they are they talking about him as the primary? Like
even as the primary, because they see how hard it is for Nikola. Like, there were games in that series where on the post-ups and things like that, Rudy did enough where it's like so much of Nikola's game is just easy. It's just he makes it look so effortless, and when it's not, you really you notice it as somebody that watches the Nuggets every night, and Nuggets fans definitely see it. So you have this like really begrudging respect that's been built for Rudy Gobert, where a lot of Nuggets fans were like, he's a clown, he gets played off the floor of the playoffs, I have 40 brother, all that kind of stuff, and now they're kind of like, yeah, no, he's really good, man. Like, he's an amazing defender.
I think that's conflating the way he makes Jokic work as a help defender.
I get it. I think I would just say, like, there are enough post-up possessions. Probably if you go back, you'd be like, oh, he actually did okay. I think a lot of it is
Game
really
5 when he had like 40.
I know.
Whatever.
But a lot of this is again, it's like you have to judge it with Nikola. You got to judge it based off a process. Like, did you do the right things? Did you make him work? Okay, did he make it? Yeah. Why? Because Nikola Jokic. And so a lot of this is like, you have to accept some of this when you deal with Joker, the same way it is, I think, with the other greats. Yeah, it's the same deal. Yeah. Like, this is why I'm when we start asking about like, well, who's going to guard Ant? I honestly, like, I think it's an interesting question, but it's like number 7 on my list of things for the Nuggets to worry about with the Wolves, because I'm like, what are you going to do? Like, it's Anthony Edwards. He's going to score 30. He's awesome. You can do everything, and he's going to do it. It's the same thing with Kawhi Leonard, where I'm like, don't worry about Kawhi. It's like, yeah, but he's going to have 40. Who cares? Like, you keep Brook Lopez from having 15. You keep Chris Dunn from having 9. You shut down everybody else. Some of this is just pain tolerance. And that's a lot of it with the Nuggets, is you have to keep it a 2-point game. Don't let them get into the ball moving everywhere, swinging it around, 3-pointers, easy stuff. Don't let them get out in transition, and then live with Jokic to a certain degree.
And Finch believes that. Finch is very much in the mold of make him a scorer. Yeah. They don't bring doubles. They do not bring doubles. The help they bring is Rudy, who's, when he's helping, he's still kind of guarding his guy too. That is what they will push there. Health is Aaron Gordon playing tonight?
No, he's out. He probably will not be back for Sunday. I'm not going to say it's definite. He might pop up as questionable on Saturday, but he's not going to play today on Friday, and on Sunday he's going to play. He's not going to. I would say there's like a 30% chance that he plays on Sunday.
Okay, all right. I just saw the questionable or game time decision or whatever tag, and that surprised me as being a little bit earlier than I was expecting Gordon to come back.
He's still listed out for the OKC
Okay.
game at latest update. So for the one on Sunday, like I said, he may pop up because that's like right up against when they're expecting him back. They were hoping by beginning of March. That was literally the word, is like beginning of March, is they're hoping to have Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon back.
I find there to be a fascinating parallel between Aaron Gordon and Julius Randle about physical health and mental health. I don't have confidence that Aaron Gordon is going to be able to play the entirety of the playoffs. Do you? Come on, you can't say you think it's more likely than not.
So if you want to kind of get into it, all of his injuries this year, do you know when they've occurred? All 3 of his injuries this year, second night of a back-to-back. You can't sit there like with some guys. You can be like, well, he doesn't take care of his body. That is not accurate with Aaron Gordon. And like, he actually did a lot this summer to accentuate. Like, that's why he's been so pissed off. Like, he did hot yoga 3 times a week in the summer to try and avoid exactly this. And it's just like the schedule got him. What I will say is
that doesn't give me a lot of confidence.
Sure,
he did every possible thing he could.
Hey, I'm not sitting here saying that. Like, I'm not sitting here saying it's 70-30 or 60-40. I think it's probably a coin flip. And you can, I don't have a problem with you being on 45-55 or 55-45. I just wouldn't go any further than that.
All right. That's good perspective there. But I bring up the Randall part of it because I think it's 55-45 that you get him in the right headspace for the entirety of the play, maybe even less than that. It's an interesting thing where I'm not sure you can bank on either of those things on either team to hold up for the entirety of the playoffs, and especially with Randall feels as far away from the mark as he has all season right now. It's not at this time last year. Randall was crescendoing like in a major way, and last night 1 of 10. It looks way out of whack, and that is about. He's played in every game this season. He's got some physical wear and tear too, but it is about what's going on between the ears with him a lot of the time, and that's hard to bank on too.
He's been great, and I'm very I am pro Randall. I am of the guys that are like, this is a 2-time All-NBA player. He deserves credit for that. That's not a bad vote. He earned that. And like, everyone was like, he's not a 16 gamer. And then last year, like he had a great play. He's had 2 good playoff runs in a row. Like, I think Julius Randle is breaking a lot of the narratives about him the same way that Cat did, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's always like, yeah, but what about that one at the end? Yeah, they lost. Like, you're not gonna yes, if the team loses, the guy's probably not gonna. If he played awesome, they wouldn't have lost. Right. I want to ask you this though. So a lot of it is the defense gets worse with Randle on court, the offense gets better. If you're in a series with Denver, do you actually can you win a series with Denver if your defense is elite and Julius is not in the right headspace? If you're able to, a lot of this is just like, can you not play him? And I don't think you need to, because I think he can play. But I just the difference
doesn't matter because Finch is going to play him.
Yeah, the difference the difference here that I would tell you is when Aaron Gordon is off the floor, the Denver Nuggets cannot defend. Period. End dot. They can't do it. He is the only thing that holds their defense up. And there's every indication of this. Everything falls apart. Everything falls apart, in part because of where Nikola is physically after 7+ playoff runs. At 31, he is not who he was in 23. And so he's not able to play with the level of energy and effort that is required to play that scheme, which means that your backside defense has to be great and you have to have a rim protector. And they don't have one outside of Aaron Gordon. He's the only guy that can cover. So it's like, if Julius is present and isn't great or doesn't play as much, the Wolves can still win that series. If Aaron Gordon does not play, the Nuggets will not win that series at all.
That would be advantage Wolves then. If we went to the Aaron Gordon doesn't play in that series and Julius Randle doesn't play in this series, you like the Wolves more than you liked them previously. Right?
Yeah. So the answer is well, how are they going to score? And the response to that is it becomes it's tight, right? Because it's Denver's offensive floor is so high and the Wolves' offensive floor is so low. But the Wolves' defensive floor in a series, I think, is still so high, and the Nuggets' defensive floor is so low. So I still wind up getting to a place where that could wind up swinging that series, even with them being down. Now, one of the problems here is just like Denver is way better equipped than they were in 24 from a spacing standpoint. Tim Hardaway Jr., Julian Strawther has been really good for them as an outside.
And Gordon, like they were leaving Gordon in that series. Like you're not leaving Gordon anymore. That's different.
And so the spacing is way better for them to be able to punish, but they have to trust those guys. And Nikola, honestly, like I'm doing a bunch of stuff on the Thunder because they're playing them tonight. And Jokic did not trust anybody in the regular season this year or last year or in the playoffs. And I think that sometimes that happens with him where he feels like he's got to do everything.
Last thing I have down, which I think is just a distinction for us to make, and for listeners too, about the Christmas Day game. I was rewatching that on the plane, and Conley, Clark, and Shannon played in that game on Christmas Day. Since then, those guys have been collectively replaced by Dosunmu, and that's a major upgrade, for this team, and will be, in a playoff context too. I mean, maybe Conley, Clark, and Shannon would have just been cut out of the playoff rotation. But it's not just that they're being cut out; they're being now replaced by a better option. And he's still figuring it out. I have like some concerns about him in a non-5-out offense. I think that's a lot of the reason why he benefited and was as good as he was in Chicago. He's still very much finding his way, but that's a new variable to this Denver matchup too, is the presence of Io, who you brought up in the Jokic way. But just even if it's not that, There's a new important variable that, one, they need to figure out in these last 25 games or whatever of the season, but two, should be a real value in this series, I think, or this matchup in particular.
If you ask Nuggets fans which of the Wolves from 2024 they hate the most, probably Rudy, just because it's Rudy and he engenders that kind of feeling. Number 2 would be Naz Reid, but number 3 would be Nickeil Alexander-Walker with a period, with a dot. They hated playing Nah. And so Io, being a very similar build of player, has an opportunity to be a huge difference maker in this series because he has more downward mobility. He's got more shooting chops than what the Nuggets' other 2 guards bring to the table. The versatility, everything that he brings to the table is extremely important for cracking how Denver is going to guard them. And it's extremely important for how they're going to be able to guard Denver, because if they go the opposite way, like you kind of mentioned, let's say that I'm wrong and you don't do Io on Yoke and you want to do what you were mentioning with this Jaden. Okay. It's like, oh no, Jamal Murray. Well, you got Io to guard Jamal Murray. It's
whereas
good.
Previously that would have been Mike Conley or Terrence Shannon Jr. or Rob Dillingham or something like that. That's a huge difference, right?
Huge swing there. I agree.
Yeah, he hasn't been good yet, man.
Yeah, I know, but you really got to give guys 20 games when they settle into a new place, and people don't think it's that long, and it is. Like Cam Johnson was wretched the first 20 games with the Denver Nuggets, and he's starting to settle in very well and shooting well and moving well and adding a lot, and the numbers are good with him. You're just going to typically see when you go into a new system, you got to learn new terminology, and it's like, it's all the mental stuff. It's, you got to learn new terminology. You don't know where do I live? Where do I get, where's my apartment? Like, where's the training room? You have to learn everything new. And all these little small things tick off a little bit of your mental focus. And then on top of it, you're trying to learn chemistry and you're trying to learn patterns and tendencies. And the other thing is, because Io has only ever been with one team, that's worse. Like you could drop Tim Hardaway Jr. into any team in the league, and he is going to play the same way every single night because Tim's played for 6 teams. He has no problem with that. But when you only know one thing, it's that first change is really hard for guys. He's going to be fine.
That's a great point. I mean, because it was even more than 20 games for Dante and Julius last year, and they've been in in multiple systems. I think there's something to acclimating to the Timberwolves system in particular that is a more drawn out a Rudy Gobert team, right? Like that that's weird in its own way. An Ant team is weird in its own way. I'm not like giving up on IL or anything like that. It just hasn't been the immediate injection that
here's a great one for you. 2020. God, my years get mixed up. 4. Pacers trade for Pascal Siakam.
Mm-hmm.
Halliburton's been out for like 3 weeks. He comes back specifically for the first game with Pascal, and they're playing the Kings, and they lose. They look terrible because they'd never played together and have no way to do it. So when you think about a player of Pascal Siakam's caliber, like
Sure.
it took them a month for them to really find, and then they wind up in the conference finals. So that's how it goes.
No, that's a great point. And I always just tied to the ceiling of this team. Like this needs to work. All these little these are margins that the Wolves were 0 out of 10 on, and for the first half of the season, and theoretically he can fill those up. I'm looking forward to the game on Sunday. I think the Wolves need to get for themselves win this game so that they're not 0-4 against Denver going into the playoffs, and need to find some things, maybe try some things to what you were talking about. I think this is going to be a really interesting game, and I'll see you out there, Matt.
Thanks, man. Looking forward to it.
For listeners, I will be doing an episode in Denver after that game. The game's on Sunday, day game. We'll record on Monday. Jason, I will. And yeah, we'll see what actually comes to fruition from this conversation that Matt and I had. I appreciate you coming on, Matt. You guys, again, you can follow him on Twitter at Hardwood_Paroxysm. And I was listening to you on Locked On NBA. I really like that with you and Wes and Hayes there. Matt's all over the place, but he's one of the best writers and talkers. One of the people that, for me, I feel like I really learned something when I listen to or read Matt in writing, and that's not always the case. You know, I feel like when I'm consuming stuff from around the rest of the league. So I really, if for some reason you aren't familiar with Matt Moore, I couldn't recommend it enough. He's going to give you the Denver perspective, but I think even a lot more so give you the perspective of the rest of the league. So again, thank you for doing it. I'm a big fan of you, man, and keep doing your thing.
Love your work, man. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. Until Monday with Jace, he's Matt. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Grinning hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah. Hope you dance.